The rain fell like silver needles against my skin, each drop a cold reminder of how utterly alone I was in this world. My thin waitress uniform clung to my body as I huddled under the small awning outside Bellini's restaurant, where I'd just finished another 12-hour shift. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce still clung to my hair, mixing with the clean scent of rain and wet asphalt. "You can go now, Emma," Mr. Bellini had said, not even looking up from counting the night's earnings. "Tips were down tonight. Tomorrow will be better, maybe. But tomorrow wouldn't be better. It never was." I'd been hearing that same hollow promise for the past 6 months, ever since I'd started working at his overpriced Italian restaurant to pay off my mother's medical debts. I checked my phone. 11:47 p.m. The last bus had left 15 minutes ago. A rumble of thunder made me flinch as I stepped out from under the awning, immediately regretting my decision as cold rainwater soaked through my thin shoes. I'd walk the 3 miles home, like I had so many nights before. At least the rain would wash away the smell of other people's food and the lingering touches of drunk businessmen who thought a $5 tip bought them the right to let their hands linger on mine. The streets were almost empty, the financial district of Boston transforming into a ghost town after business hours. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, creating pools of golden light that seemed to float atop the darkness. My footsteps echoed against the buildings, mixing with the percussion of rain. I was so lost in thought, I didn't notice the black car slowing beside me until its tires splashed muddy water across my already soaked legs. "I'm sorry," a deep voice called out. The rear window had been lowered just enough to reveal a pair of intense, dark eyes that seemed to evaluate everything about me in seconds. I instinctively stepped back, nearly stumbling on the curb. The car, which I now recognized as a Bentley, gleamed like obsidian under the streetlights. It was the kind of car I only served drinks beside, never rode in. "You work at Bellini's," the voice stated. Not a question. I clutched my purse tighter, alarm bells ringing in my head. "How do you know that?" The window lowered further, revealing a face that belonged in a Renaissance painting. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with 5 o'clock shadow, and those eyes, like polished black stones that absorbed light rather than reflected it. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with a dangerous beauty that made my heart pound harder against my ribs. "I was dining there earlier." His voice carried the faint trace of an accent I couldn't place. "Private room." The private room? Of course. The section reserved for Mr. Bellini's special guests, the ones who made him nervous, whom he personally attended to, while ordering the rest of us to stay away. "You're walking in this?" He gestured to the downpour with a slight frown. I missed my bus. I didn't know why I was explaining myself to a stranger, especially one who made the hair on my arms stand on end. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Get in. I'll drive you home." "No, thank you." The words rushed out automatically. A slight smile curved his lips, transforming his face into something even more magnetic. It wasn't a request. The way he said it, soft yet unyielding, made my stomach tighten. Before I could respond, the rear door swung open, revealing leather interiors that smelled of expensive cologne and something distinctly masculine. "My mother told me never to get into cars with strangers," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. He studied me for a long moment. "Alexander Volkov," he said finally. "Now I'm not a stranger." He extended his hand, a large gold signet ring catching the light. I should have walked away. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But the rain was getting heavier, the wind colder, and something in those dark eyes held me captive. "Emma," I replied, not taking his hand. "Emma Collins. Emma." He said my name like he was tasting it. "The storm is getting worse. Get in." As if on cue, lightning split the sky, followed by a crash of thunder that seemed to shake the very ground. I made a decision that would change everything. I slid into the car beside him. The door closed with a soft thud, sealing me into a cocoon of warmth and the heady scent of his cologne. Up close, I could see how expensive his suit was, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to broad shoulders. His hands resting casually on his thigh were adorned with only the signet ring, his nails perfectly manicured. "Where do you live?" he asked. I hesitated, suddenly aware of the foolishness of telling this stranger my address. "Dorchester," I said, naming only the district. He nodded to the driver, a broad-shouldered man whose eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror before returning to the road. "You're a long way from home," Alexander observed. "The pay is better downtown." I kept my answers short, my body pressed against the door, maintaining as much distance as possible in the confined space. "And yet you walk in the rain." His observation wasn't judgmental, merely curious, not by choice. He studied me in a way that made me feel like he was reading every page of my life story. "How long have you worked for Bellini?" 6 months. "You don't like it there?" Again, not a question. I glanced at him, meeting those intense eyes. "It pays the bills." "Barely, I would imagine." His gaze flickered to my worn purse, the frayed edges of my uniform. I felt a flush of shame creep up my neck. "I manage," I replied stiffly. The car glided through the empty streets, the rain creating a hypnotic pattern against the tinted windows. Despite my discomfort, the gentle motion and warmth began to make my eyelids heavy. I fought against it, determined to stay alert. "You're exhausted." His voice had softened, almost gentle. "Sleep if you need to. We'll wake you when we reach Dorchester." I shook my head. "I'm fine." He reached into a compartment and pulled out a cashmere blanket. "Here." When I didn't take it, he draped it over my lap himself, his fingers brushing against my leg. Even that brief touch sent an electric current through me. "Thank you," I murmured, unable to remember the last time someone had shown me such a simple kindness. "You're shivering." There was concern in his voice, but something else too, a possessiveness that should have alarmed me but instead made me feel strangely safe. The car's gentle motion, the soft leather beneath me, and the warmth of the blanket conspired against my determination to stay awake. My eyelids grew heavier, and I fought a losing battle against sleep. The last thing I remembered was Alexander speaking quietly in a language I didn't understand. His voice a low rumble that followed me into dreams. I woke to the sensation of movement, but not the familiar stop-and-go of city traffic. This was a constant, gentle vibration, a soft hum beneath me. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. The surface beneath me was too comfortable to be my lumpy mattress, the air too fresh to be my cramped apartment. Then I remembered the rain, the black car, the dark-eyed stranger who'd offered me a ride. My eyes flew open. I was no longer in a car. Instead, I found myself on a cream-colored leather couch in what appeared to be impossible. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Wood-paneled walls, plush carpet, crystal glasses in a lighted cabinet, small oval windows. I was on an airplane. No, not just an airplane, a private jet. Panic surged through me as I bolted upright. The cashmere blanket pooled around my waist. I was still wearing my waitress uniform, but my shoes had been removed, placed neatly beside the couch. "You're awake." That voice, deep, slightly accented, sent a chill down my spine. Alexander sat in a leather chair across from me, his jacket removed, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He was watching me with those penetrating dark eyes, a crystal glass of amber liquid in his hand. "Where am I?" My voice came out as a frightened whisper. "What is this?" "Currently, about 30,000 feet above the Atlantic." He took a sip from his glass, watching me over the rim. "You slept through takeoff. You must have been exhausted." "Takeoff?" The word felt foreign on my tongue. You kidnapped me?" Something flashed in his eyes. Amusement? Irritation? "I prefer to think of it as rescuing you. From what?" I scrambled to my feet, looking wildly around for an exit, a phone, anything. "From a life of serving drinks to men who don't deserve to breathe the same air as you." He set down his glass and stood. Even in my panic, I couldn't help but notice how he dominated the space, his presence filling every corner of the cabin. "You had no right," I hissed, backing away as he approached. "Take me back. Now." He stopped, leaving a careful distance between us. "I'm afraid that's not possible. We're already halfway to Italy." "Italy?" My voice rose to a near shriek. "Why? What do you want from me?" "Sit down, Emma." His tone was gentle, but left no room for argument. "I'll explain everything." "I don't want to sit down. I want to go home." Tears of frustration and fear burned behind my eyes. "Home?" He raised an eyebrow. To your leaking apartment? To another day of being pawed at by drunken customers? To watching your mother deteriorate because you can't afford better care? I froze. How do you know about my mother? A small, satisfied smile curved his lips. I make it my business to know everything about what belongs to me. I don't belong to you, I whispered, even as a treacherous part of me responded to the possessive gleam in his eyes. Not yet. He moved closer, and this time I didn't back away. But you will, Emma Collins. You've belonged to me since the moment I saw you 6 months ago, when you first walked into Bellini's looking for work. My blood turned to ice. 6 months? You've been watching me for 6 months? He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with surprising gentleness. I've been waiting for you my entire life. I just didn't know it until 6 months ago. I should have been terrified, and part of me was, but another part, a part I didn't recognize, thrilled at his words, at his touch. Who are you? Really? You know who I am. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. You've felt my presence every time I've dined at Bellini's. You've sensed me watching you, and I had. Those nights when the back of my neck would prickle, when I'd turn to find the private room door slightly ajar, a shadow moving behind it. Why me? My voice trembled. His dark eyes searched mine, because from the moment I saw you, I knew no one else would ever be enough. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, throwing me off balance. Alexander's arms came around me instantly, steadying me against his chest. I could feel his heart beating, strong and steady, as mine raced like a frightened bird's. I can't just disappear, I said against his shirt. My mother is being moved to the best private care facility in Boston as we speak. His voice rumbled through his chest against my ear. All her expenses paid. She'll want for nothing. I pulled back to look at his face. Why would you do that? Because she's your mother. He said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, and because I take care of what's mine. I'm not yours, I repeated, but the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. His smile was that of a predator who knew his prey was already caught. You will be. By choice, Emma. I may have brought you onto my plane without your knowledge, but everything that happens from this point forward will be your decision. And if I decide to leave, to go home, then I'll have you flown back the moment we land. His thumb traced the outline of my jaw. But I don't think you will. You don't know me, I whispered. I know you work 16-hour shifts without complaint. I know you send most of your money to your mother's care facility. I know you read poetry on your breaks and dream of seeing the world. His eyes never left mine. I know you deserve more than life has given you. The truth of his words struck me like a physical blow. No one had ever seen me so clearly before. What happens in Italy? I asked, my resolve weakening. You'll stay at my villa, as my guest, not my prisoner. His hands moved to my shoulders, firm but gentle. You'll want for nothing, and you'll have time to decide if the life I'm offering is one you want to share. And what life is that? My voice was barely audible over the hum of the engines. One where you never have to worry about money again. Where you're protected, cherished. His eyes darkened. One where you belong to me, and I belong to you. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it awakened something primal inside me, something that had been sleeping my entire life. I don't even know you, I said, one last feeble protest. You will. He released me and stepped back. We have a lifetime for that. Outside the small window, the first rays of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere below, an ocean separated me from everything I'd ever known. I should have been terrified. I should have demanded to be taken home the moment we landed. Instead, I found myself wondering what it would be like to be truly seen, truly wanted, for the first time in my life. And as Alexander watched me with those intense, dark eyes, I realized I was already falling into a different kind of captivity, one with invisible chains that might prove impossible to break. The Italian coastline appeared below us like a watercolor painting. Terracotta rooftops, emerald hills, and the sapphire Mediterranean stretching to the horizon. I pressed my face against the small window, momentarily forgetting my situation in the face of such beauty. "Have you ever been to Italy before?" Alexander asked, coming to stand beside me. I shook my head, unable to tear my eyes from the view. "I've never been anywhere. My passport—" I trailed off, suddenly realizing, I don't have my passport. How did we even— "It's been taken care of." His tone suggested this was a trivial matter, easily handled with money or influence or both. The plane began its descent, and my stomach lurched, partly from the changing altitude, partly from the reality of what was happening. I was in a foreign country with a man I barely knew, a man who'd essentially kidnapped me, a man who spoke of me as if I were already his possession. Yet here I was, heart racing with something that wasn't entirely fear. "Where exactly are we?" I asked, needing to break the heavy silence. "Amalfi Coast. My family has owned property here for generations." Family. The word sparked a flurry of questions. Who was this man? What kind of family did he come from? The private jet, the casual mention of a villa, the way he'd spoken of my mother's medical care as if the cost were inconsequential. All of it painted a picture of immense wealth. But there was something else, something in the watchful eyes of his driver, in the careful way he scanned our surroundings, in the power that emanated from him like a physical force. The plane touched down smoothly on what appeared to be a private airstrip. No terminal, no other aircraft, just a stretch of tarmac, ending near a cluster of sleek black vehicles. Men in dark suits stood beside them, sunglasses hiding their eyes even in the early morning light. "Your security?" I asked, nodding toward the waiting men. A slight smile curved his lips. "Among other things." The plane taxied to a stop, and Alexander rose, extending his hand to me. I hesitated before placing my fingers in his palm, letting him guide me to my feet. His hand was warm, his grip firm but gentle, as if he were handling something precious. "Whatever you need while you're here will be provided," he said, his eyes searching mine. "Clothes, books, anything. You only need to ask. What I need is to understand what I'm doing here," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why me? There must be 1,000 women more suitable for whatever this is." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "I didn't want suitable. I wanted you." His thumb traced circles on the inside of my wrist, just over my pulse point. "The moment I saw you, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were mine." The simple declaration sent shivers down my spine. Even if you didn't know it yet, before I could respond, the cabin door opened, and the same broad-shouldered driver who'd been in the car appeared, nodding respectfully to Alexander. "Everything is ready, sir." "Good. We'll go directly to the villa." Alexander hadn't released my hand, and I didn't pull away as he led me toward the door. The heat hit me first, warm, fragrant air that smelled of salt and flowers. After Boston's endless rain, the Mediterranean sun felt like a caress against my skin. For a moment, I closed my eyes, tilting my face upward, absorbing the warmth. When I opened them, I found Alexander watching me with an intensity that made my cheeks burn. The naked hunger in his gaze wasn't purely sexual. It was deeper, more complex, like a man seeing water after days in the desert. He led me to the largest of the waiting vehicles, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. The driver opened the rear door, and Alexander guided me inside with a light touch at the small of my back. His hand lingered there as he slid in beside me, his body close enough that I could feel the heat of him through my thin uniform. As we drove away from the airstrip, I caught glimpses of the coastline through the windows, winding roads carved into cliffs, glimpses of the sea far below, villas perched precariously on the hillsides like birds' nests. It was breathtaking, like nothing I'd ever seen outside of travel magazines. "It's beautiful," I murmured, almost to myself. "Yes," Alexander replied, but when I turned, he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at me. "Beautiful." I flushed and looked away. "You said I'm free to leave. Does that offer still stand?" His expression hardened slightly. "I'm a man of my word, Emma. If you choose to go, I won't stop you. But I hope you'll give us a chance." "There is no us," I said quietly. "There's you, a man I met yesterday, who decided to bring me to Italy without my consent. And there's me, trying to figure out what the hell is happening. A muscle ticked in his jaw. I've known of you for 6 months. I've learned everything about you, your favorite books, your mother's condition, how you take your coffee in the mornings. I know you're drowning in debt that isn't even yours. I know you haven't bought yourself anything new in over a year because every spare dollar goes to your mother's care. My blood ran cold. That's not knowing me. That's stalking. Call it what you will. He shrugged, unapologetic. I wanted to be sure. Sure of what? That you were worth upending my life for. His candor startled me. I don't do this, Emma. I don't bring women into my world. It's too dangerous, too complicated. But with you... He shook his head slightly, as if he too were bewildered by his actions. With you, I had no choice. The car rounded a bend, and suddenly, the villa came into view. Villa was an understatement. It was a palace, cascading down the cliffside in a series of terraces and balconies, all gleaming white stone and climbing roses. The Mediterranean stretched behind it, an endless expanse of blue. My breath caught. This is yours? Ours, he corrected, watching my reaction carefully. If you want it to be. The car pulled through wrought iron gates and up a winding driveway lined with olive trees. As we approached the main entrance, I noticed more men in dark suits positioned discreetly around the property, their attentive postures suggesting they were more than just household staff. Why do you need so much security? I asked, unease creeping back into my voice. Alexander's expression gave nothing away. My business interests require certain precautions. What exactly is your business? The car came to a stop before I could get an answer. The driver opened Alexander's door, and he stepped out before turning to offer me his hand. After a moment's hesitation, I took it, allowing him to help me from the car. Up close, the villa was even more magnificent, ancient stone mellowed by centuries of sun, windows framed by climbing roses, a fountain playing in the central courtyard. It was like something from a fairy tale, too beautiful to be real. Welcome to Villa Volkov, Alexander said, his hand coming to rest possessively at the small of my back. The massive front doors opened before we reached them, revealing a slender woman with silver-streaked black hair, her posture ramrod straight, her expression carefully neutral. Alessandra! Alexander greeted her in a tone that suggested respect rather than familiarity. This is Emma Collins. She will be staying with us. See that she has everything she needs. The woman's dark eyes flicked over me, taking in my rumpled waitress uniform, my tangled hair, my obvious discomfort. If she found anything unusual about my sudden appearance, she gave no sign of it. Of course, Mr. Volkov. Miss Collins, welcome. Her English was perfect, with just a hint of an Italian accent. Would you like to freshen up after your journey? Before I could answer, Alexander spoke. Have a bath prepared in the blue suite, and bring a selection of clothes. She arrived with nothing. The presumption in his tone made me bristle. I can speak for myself. Something like amusement flickered in Alessandra's eyes, quickly suppressed. Alexander, however, didn't look amused at all. His hand tightened slightly against my back. Of course you can, he said, his voice deceptively soft. But right now, you're exhausted, disoriented, and still wearing clothes you've been in for over 24 hours. Let Alessandra take care of you. We'll talk after you've rested. Put that way, it was hard to argue. I was exhausted, and the thought of a bath was too tempting to resist. I nodded, and Alessandra gestured for me to follow her. As I moved away from Alexander, his hand lingered on my back until the last possible moment, as if he were reluctant to break contact. I felt his eyes on me as Alessandra led me up a sweeping marble staircase and into the depths of the villa. The blue suite is one of our finest guest rooms, she told me, as we walked along a corridor lined with artwork that belonged in a museum. It has a private terrace overlooking the sea. How long has he owned this place? I asked, trying to glean any information I could. Alessandra's expression remained impassive. The Volkov family has owned this property for 3 generations. And what exactly does he do? For business, I mean. She slowed her pace, giving me a sidelong glance. Mr. Volkov has diverse interests. Import-export primarily, real estate, some technology investments. Her tone suggested the conversation was over. "Here we are." She opened a set of double doors to reveal a room that took my breath away. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating walls painted the exact blue of the sea beyond the terrace. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in white linens that looked cloud-soft. Fresh flowers filled crystal vases, their scent mingling with the salt air coming through the open terrace doors. "The bathroom is through there," Alessandra said, indicating a door to the right. "I'll have clothes brought up immediately." "Is there anything specific you require?" I looked down at my wrinkled uniform, suddenly acutely aware of how out of place I was in these surroundings. I don't know. Something comfortable, I guess." Alessandra nodded. "Very well. The bath will be ready shortly." She left, closing the doors behind her. And for the first time since entering the black car in Boston, I was alone. I moved to the terrace doors, stepping out into the warm sunlight. The view was breathtaking. Terraced gardens leading down to a private beach, the Mediterranean stretching to the horizon. What was I doing here? In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from a struggling waitress to... what? A guest in a billionaire's Italian villa. A captive, albeit in a gilded cage. The sensible thing would be to demand a phone, call the embassy, get myself home as quickly as possible. But home to what? My cramped apartment with its leaking ceiling? Another double shift at Bellini's, fending off wandering hands? My mother's medical bills, piling higher each month? And then there was Alexander himself. The way he looked at me, like I was precious, like I was necessary, stirred something in me I hadn't known existed. No one had ever wanted me like that before. No one had ever seen me the way he seemed to. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. A young woman entered, carrying a stack of neatly folded clothes. She set them on the bed with a respectful nod. "The bath is ready, miss," she said in heavily accented English. "Is there anything else you need? A phone?" I asked hopefully. She hesitated. "I would have to ask Mr. Volkov." "Of course. Never mind. Thank you." After she left, I explored the bathroom, finding it as opulent as the bedroom. Marble floors, a sunken tub big enough for 3 people, already filled with steaming water scattered with rose petals. Expensive-looking bottles lined a shelf. Shampoos, oils, soaps. I shed my grimy uniform, letting it pool at my feet, and stepped into the tub. The hot water enveloped me, and I couldn't suppress a moan of pleasure. How long had it been since I'd had a proper bath? My apartment only had a cramped shower with unpredictable water pressure. As I soaked, reality began to set in. I was thousands of miles from home, with a man who'd admitted to watching me for months, who spoke of me as if I already belonged to him. A man with enough power and money to arrange international travel without documentation, to move my mother to a private facility overnight, to command a small army of security personnel. What kind of man had that kind of power? What kind of business interest required that level of protection? Import, export, Alessandra had said. But there was more to it, I was certain. The way his driver watched everything, the security throughout the property, the careful way Alessandra had answered my questions. It all suggested something beyond legitimate business. By the time I emerged from the bath, my skin flushed and my thoughts slightly clearer, I'd made a decision. I would stay. For now. I would learn what I could about Alexander Volkov and his world, and then I would decide whether to run or to stay. I wrapped myself in a plush towel and returned to the bedroom to examine the clothes that had been left for me. The selection was impressive. Dresses in various styles, pants, blouses, even lingerie and nightwear, all in my size. I chose a simple sundress in pale blue linen, feeling strangely vulnerable as I slipped it over my head. The fabric was finer than anything I'd ever worn, soft against my skin. As I was running a brush through my damp hair, another knock came at the door. My heart jumped, thinking it might be Alexander, but it was Alessandra who entered. "Mr. Volkov invites you to join him for lunch on the main terrace," she said. "When you're ready." And if I'm not ready? Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Perhaps respect. "Then I will tell him you're resting. The choice is yours, Miss Collins." The choice is yours. Alexander had said something similar on the plane. It was a strange sort of power to give me, when he'd already taken so much choice away. "I'll join him," I said finally. "I have questions that need answers." Alessandra nodded. "Very well. Follow me when you're ready." After she left, I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Whatever game Alexander Volkov was playing, I needed to understand the rules. And to do that, I needed to face him again. This enigmatic man who'd turned my world upside down in the space of a single rainy night. The main terrace was a masterpiece of Mediterranean elegance. White stone floors, climbing bougainvillea casting dappled shade, and a panoramic view that stole my breath. Alexander sat at a glass-topped table, his attention focused on papers spread before him. He'd changed into linen pants and a white shirt, open at the collar, his dark hair still slightly damp as if he too had showered. The casual attire softened his appearance, making him seem almost approachable, almost. He looked up as I approached, and the intensity in his gaze made my steps falter. He rose immediately, his eyes traveling over me in a way that felt like a physical touch. "The dress suits you," he said, setting aside his papers and pulling out a chair for me. "Though you'd look beautiful in anything." I sat down, careful to maintain my composure. "Or nothing at all. Isn't that the usual line?" His lips curved in amusement. "I'm not interested in usual lines, Emma." He retook his seat, gesturing to a young man who immediately stepped forward to pour wine into crystal glasses. "I hope you slept well as can be expected after being abducted," I replied, leaving my wine untouched. He didn't flinch at the accusation. "You got into my car willingly, to go home, not to Italy." Semantics. He waved a dismissive hand, then leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. "You're here now. The question is, what happens next?" "That depends on you answering some questions," I said, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "Ask anything. I'll answer what I can." I chose my words carefully. "Who are you really? And don't say Alexander Volkov. I want to know what you do, why you need all this security, why you've brought me here." He studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "My family has controlled certain business interests in Eastern Europe for generations. We've expanded into Western markets over the past decade." "What kind of business interests?" "Various enterprises." His voice remained casual, but his eyes had hardened, some more legitimate than others. The realization that had been building since our first meeting crystallized into certainty. "Your Mafia." He didn't deny it. That term is so imprecise. I prefer to think of myself as a businessman operating outside conventional restrictions. My pulse quickened. I'd suspected, of course, the security, the wealth, the power, but hearing him all but confirm it sent a chill through me. "You're a criminal. By some definitions." He took a sip of his wine, watching me over the rim of his glass. "By others, I'm a man who creates order where governments fail, who provides protection to those who need it, who keeps a balance of power that prevents greater violence. You're justifying breaking the law. I'm explaining how the world actually works, beyond the simplified morality you've been taught." His voice remained calm, almost gentle, as if he were explaining a difficult concept to a child. "The line between legal and illegal is drawn by those with power. I simply operate under a different set of rules." A server appeared, placing a plate of delicate seafood before each of us. I stared down at the artfully arranged food, my appetite gone. "And where do I fit into this world of yours? Why am I here?" Alexander set down his glass, his expression growing serious. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. There's a light in you, Emma, a resilience, a purity, that I haven't seen in anyone else. So, you decided to..." "What? Collect me? Like some rare specimen?" His jaw tightened. "I decided to give you the life you deserve. Away from struggle, away from men who don't value you. By taking me away from everything I know, without asking." I pushed my plate away, anger rising. "That's not protection. That's possession." "Yes." The simple admission startled me. "I want to possess you, Emma. I want you to be mine in every way a woman can belong to a man. But I want you to choose it. The raw honesty in his voice sent heat spiraling through me, contradicting the outrage I knew I should feel. And if I don't choose it? Then you're free to leave. His eyes never left mine. But I think you're curious about this life, about me, about what we could be together. He wasn't wrong. And that terrified me more than any threat could have. You're asking me to accept a life built on crime, on hurting people. I'm asking you to accept reality. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. The world you think you live in, where good is rewarded and evil punished, where hard work guarantees success, it's a fairy tale. I'm offering you truth and protection and anything else your heart desires. The worst part was how tempting his words were. How easily I could imagine slipping into this life of luxury and protection, leaving behind the constant struggle that had defined my existence for so long. My mother, I said, changing tactics. You said she's being moved to a better facility? The best in New England. He reached into his pocket, producing a phone which he slid across the table to me. Call the number and contacts under Wellington Care. Ask for Dr. Patel. She'll confirm your mother arrived safely this morning and is settling in. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone, finding the contact and dialing. A female voice answered, identifying herself as Dr. Patel. When I asked about my mother, she confirmed everything Alexander had said. Marion Collins had been transferred that morning, was comfortable, and was already scheduled for additional treatments unavailable at her previous facility. Would you like to speak with her? Dr. Patel asked. Tears pricked my eyes. Yes, please. My mother's voice, stronger than I'd heard it in months, came through the line. Emma? Sweetheart, where are you? They told me you'd arranged all this. I swallowed hard, looking across at Alexander, who watched me with unreadable eyes. I'm taking care of some business, Mom. How are you feeling? Better than I have in ages. The happiness in her voice was unmistakable. This place is amazing, Emma. My room has a view of a garden and the doctors. They've already done more tests in one day than the other place did in a month. Guilt and gratitude warred within me. That's wonderful, Mom. But how are you affording this? It must cost a fortune. I met Alexander's gaze. I've made some changes in my life. Don't worry about the money. Just focus on getting better. After a few more minutes of conversation, I promised to call again soon and hung up, setting the phone carefully on the table between us. Thank you, I said quietly, for what you've done for her. Alexander nodded, his expression softening. Your loyalty to her is one of the things I admire about you. Family is everything. The way he said it suggested a deeper meaning, a core principle rather than a platitude. Is that why you're in the family business? Loyalty. A shadow crossed his face. My father built an empire. My responsibility is to protect and expand it, even if that means doing terrible things. Even then, his honesty was disarming, but I have lines I don't cross, rules I live by. What kind of rules? I don't harm children. I don't traffic in humans. I don't betray those loyal to me. He held my gaze, and I protect what's mine with my life. There it was again, that possessiveness that should have repelled me, but instead sent a forbidden thrill through my veins. I'm not yours. Not yet. His confidence was absolute, but you will be. The meal continued in tense silence, broken only by the gentle clinking of silverware against fine china. Despite my agitation, hunger eventually won out, and I found myself eating the exquisitely prepared seafood, aware of Alexander's approving gaze. You mentioned staying at the villa, I said finally. For how long? That's up to you. I'll be here for at least 2 weeks before business calls me back to Boston. He refilled my water glass without asking. You're welcome to stay longer, with or without me. And after that? After that, if you choose to stay with me, we return to Boston together, to my home. His eyes darkened. To our life. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Stay or go. Choose me or don't. The intensity of his gaze pinned me to my seat. But know this, Emma. If you choose me, it's forever. I don't share what's mine. I don't allow second thoughts. Once you're mine until death. A chill ran through me at the finality in his tone. That sounds more like a threat than a proposal. It's a promise. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. I will give you everything. Luxury, protection, pleasure beyond anything you've imagined. But in return, I demand absolute loyalty. The touch of his skin against mine sent electricity racing up my arm. And what about love? Or doesn't that factor into your equation? Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. So quickly I might have imagined it. Love is a luxury many in my position can't afford. Then what am I to you? A possession? A trophy? You're a necessity. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. From the first moment I saw you, I knew I would never be complete without you. Before I could respond, a man in a dark suit approached, leaning down to whisper something in Alexander's ear. His expression hardened instantly, the vulnerable moment vanishing as if it had never existed. "Excuse me," he said, rising from the table. "Business requires my attention. Alessandra will show you around the grounds. We'll continue our conversation at dinner." He was gone before I could object, striding away with the confident gait of a man accustomed to command. The transformation had been instantaneous, from the almost tender man who'd touched my hand to the cold, controlled leader of a criminal empire. Alessandra appeared as if summoned by magic, her expression as unreadable as ever. "Would you care to see the gardens, Miss Collins? Or perhaps the beach?" I stood, still unsettled by Alexander's abrupt departure and the conversation that had preceded it. "The beach, I think. I need some air." She led me down a series of stone staircases that wound through terraced gardens, each more beautiful than the last. Olive trees provided patches of shade, their silver-green leaves rustling in the gentle breeze coming off the sea. "How long have you worked for him?" I asked as we walked. Alessandra's pace didn't falter. "For Mr. Volkov specifically, 3 years. For the family, nearly 20. What is he like? As an employer, I mean." She considered this for a moment. "Demanding, fair, unforgiving of betrayal," she glanced at me. "He values loyalty above all else." So I've gathered. We reached the bottom of the steps, where a pristine private beach stretched before us, the Mediterranean lapping gently at the shore. "Has he brought other women here before?" Alessandra's expression revealed nothing. "No, Miss Collins, you are the first. The information shouldn't have pleased me, but it did. Why me, do you think? It is not my place to speculate on Mr. Volkov's personal matters." Her tone was polite but firm, ending that line of questioning. I slipped off my sandals, stepping onto the warm sand. "Am I a prisoner here, Alessandra?" For the first time, something like sympathy crossed her face. "Mr. Volkov has given orders that you are to have whatever you wish. Go wherever you like within the property. Beyond that..." She hesitated. "I cannot say. In other words, I was free within the confines of a gilded cage. I walked to the water's edge, letting the cool waves wash over my feet. The beach was entirely private, shielded from neighboring properties by rocky outcroppings. I could see security personnel positioned discreetly at various points, watching everything. "I'll leave you to enjoy the beach," Alessandra said. "When you wish to return to the villa, simply inform one of the staff, and they will escort you." Left alone on the pristine beach, I sat on the warm sand and tried to make sense of the bizarre turn my life had taken. 24 hours ago, I'd been a waitress in a rainy Boston night. Now I sat on a private Mediterranean beach, the property of a man who'd casually admitted to being a Mafia boss who spoke of me as if I were already his. The strangest part wasn't the luxury surrounding me or even the implicit danger of Alexander's world. It was how tempted I felt to accept what he offered, not just the material comforts, but the intensity of his focus, the way he seemed to see me completely. For someone who'd spent her entire life feeling invisible, that recognition was intoxicating. I stood, brushing sand from my dress, and walked along the shoreline. The water lapped at my feet, cool and refreshing under the warm sun. I could feel eyes watching me, the security personnel stationed around the property. But they kept their distance, giving me the illusion of privacy. After an hour of solitude, I made my way back to the stone steps leading up to the villa. A young man in a dark suit materialized as I approached. "Would you like to return to your room, Miss Collins?" he asked in accented English. Actually, I'd like to explore the villa, if that's allowed. He nodded. Of course, I can show you around, or you may explore on your own. Mr. Volkov has given instructions that you have full access to the property, except for his private office when he is conducting business. I'll explore on my own, thank you. He inclined his head respectfully. If you need anything, there are staff throughout the villa. You only need to ask. The villa was even more extensive than I'd initially realized, a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings climbing up the hillside. I wandered through grand rooms filled with priceless art, intimate reading nooks tucked into unexpected corners, and expansive terraces offering different perspectives of the coastline. In one wing, I discovered what appeared to be family spaces, photo frames on tables, books left open as if recently read, a half-finished chess game on an antique board. I picked up one of the photos, studying the image of a younger Alexander standing beside an older man with the same penetrating dark eyes. His father, I assumed, the man who had built an empire that Alexander now controlled. That was taken in St. Petersburg 5 years ago. I nearly dropped the frame at the sound of Alexander's voice. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he watched me replace the photo carefully on the table. I'm sorry, I was just exploring. Don't apologize. He moved into the room, his presence immediately filling the space. He'd changed again, now wearing a tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. You're free to go anywhere in the villa. Except your office during business, I said, recalling the security guard's words. A slight smile curved his lips. For your protection, not mine. Some of my associates can be unpredictable. Dangerous, you mean? Yes. He didn't bother to deny it. Not everyone in my world shares my code of ethics. Ethics. I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Is that what you call it? Instead of taking offense, he moved closer, stopping just within arm's reach. Mock if you wish, but even in my world, especially in my world, rules are necessary, lines that cannot be crossed, and what happens to those who cross them? His eyes hardened. They are dealt with. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. This man, who looked at me with such tenderness, was capable of violence I could barely imagine. Your business earlier, I said, changing the subject. Is everything all right? Nothing for you to worry about. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. Just a minor territorial dispute. Territorial dispute, I repeated. Like gang wars? His expression darkened. We're not street gangs, Emma. We're organizations with histories spanning generations, controlling billions in assets. When conflicts arise, they're handled with precision and violence. When necessary. He didn't apologize or justify, simply stated it as fact. I stepped away from his touch, needing distance to think clearly. I can't pretend to understand your world, Alexander. It's so far removed from anything I've known. Then let me show you. His voice softened, becoming almost persuasive, not the darkness. You don't need to see that part, but the rest. The privilege, the freedom, the power to change lives. Like my mother's. Yes. Like your mother's. He closed the distance between us again. Do you have any idea how much good you could do with the resources I'm offering you? How many lives you could improve? It was a seductive thought, having the means to help others the way I'd always wished I could. At what cost? To you? Nothing but your loyalty to me. His eyes burned into mine. I would never ask you to compromise your principles, Emma. Your goodness is part of what draws me to you. And if your world threatens that goodness, if being with you means accepting things I can't morally justify, then you walk away. He said it simply, though something flashed in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or fear. But before you decide, give me these 2 weeks. Let me show you what life with me could be. It was reasonable. Too reasonable. Coming from a man who'd essentially kidnapped me. But standing there, looking into his eyes, I found myself nodding. 2 weeks. Relief washed over his features, quickly masked by his usual controlled expression. Good. Now, would you join me for dinner? There's a restaurant in Positano I think you'd enjoy. I don't have anything suitable to wear to a nice restaurant, I said, Gesturing to my simple sundress, his smile returned, warm and genuine. That's easily remedied. I took the liberty of having some additional items brought to your room while you were at the beach, including evening wear. Of course he had. You seem very confident I'd agree to stay. Not confident. Hopeful. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. Be ready at 7? I'll meet you in the main hall. The dresses laid out on my bed when I returned to my room were breathtaking. Designer pieces in silks and chiffons, each one probably costing more than I'd earned in 6 months at Bellini's. After a quick shower, I selected a midnight blue slip dress that fell just above my knees, elegant in its simplicity. Among the accessories, I found a delicate silver bracelet that complemented it perfectly. Looking at my reflection in the full-length mirror, I barely recognized myself. My hair, usually pulled back in a functional ponytail for work, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. The dress clung to curves I usually hid under baggy clothes. Even my eyes seemed different, wider, brighter, as if seeing the world anew. At precisely 7, I descended the marble staircase to find Alexander waiting in the entry hall. He wore a black suit that fit him impeccably, his dark hair combed back from his forehead. When he saw me, he went still, his eyes traveling slowly from my face down the length of my body and back again. You are breathtaking, he said, his voice lower than usual. Heat crept into my cheeks. Thank you. For the dress and everything. He offered his arm. Shall we? Outside, a sleek sports car waited, its engine purring softly. Alexander opened the passenger door for me, his hand resting briefly on my lower back as I slid inside. The interior smelled of expensive leather and his cologne, a heady combination that made my pulse quicken. No driver tonight, I asked as he settled behind the wheel. I prefer to drive myself when I can. He glanced at me as the car moved smoothly down the driveway. It's one of the few times I feel truly in control. I would have thought you always feel in control. His laugh was unexpected, rich and genuine. Appearances can be deceiving. In my position, I'm constantly balancing competing interests, managing volatile personalities. It's a delicate web. And what happens when the web breaks? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. People die. The blunt response silenced me as we wound along the coastal road, the Mediterranean glittering in the early evening light. Alexander drove with confident precision, taking the hairpin turns with ease, one hand occasionally dropping to rest on my knee as if he couldn't bear not touching me. Positano revealed itself around a bend, a pastel-colored cascade of buildings tumbling down the hillside toward the sea, like something from a fairy tale. Alexander navigated the narrow streets with practiced ease, eventually pulling up before a restaurant perched on a cliff edge. They have the best seafood on the coast, he said as we entered, his hand once again finding the small of my back, and a wine cellar that would make you weep. The maitre d' greeted Alexander with nervous deference, immediately leading us to what was clearly the best table, a secluded spot on the terrace with an unobstructed view of the sunset over the Mediterranean. No reservation had been mentioned. I suspected Alexander never needed one. You come here often? I asked as we were seated. Whenever I'm in Italy. He ordered wine in fluent Italian, his accent perfect to my untrained ear. This coast has always been special to me, away from the pressures of Boston and Moscow. Moscow, where I was born, where the heart of my family's operations remains, though we've expanded significantly into American markets over the past decade. He regarded me over the rim of his wineglass. Does that surprise you? Everything about you surprises me, I admitted. Yesterday I thought you were just another wealthy customer at Bellini's. Today you're a monster? He supplied when I trailed off. I shook my head. I don't think you're a monster. I think you're a man who's made choices I don't understand, living by rules I wasn't taught. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Most people see the world in black and white, good and evil, legal and criminal. But reality exists in shades of gray. The politician who takes bribes to fund his campaign, the corporation that poisons a river to save costs, the police officer who looks the other way for the right price, are they so different from me? At least I'm honest about what I am. And what are you exactly? A man who creates order from chaos, who protects those loyal to him, who keeps his word, always. His eyes held mine. A man who has never wanted anything or anyone the way I want you. Heat bloomed in my chest, spreading outward until my whole body felt flushed. The intensity of his gaze, the raw honesty in his voice made it hard to breathe. Why? The question escaped in a whisper. Why me? Alexander was silent for a long moment, as if carefully choosing his words. I've known many women, Emma, beautiful women, intelligent women, women born into my world, who understand its rules and expectations. But none of them has what you have, which is light. He said it simply. A fundamental goodness that hasn't been corrupted by hardship or ambition. A strength that comes from within, not from power or wealth. His voice dropped lower. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were what I've been searching for without knowing it. The missing piece. The server arrived with our appetizers, breaking the moment. Throughout the meal, Alexander was attentive, ensuring my glass was never empty, asking about my preferences, sharing stories of the region's history and his previous visits. He was charming, knowledgeable, and at times even playful. A side of him I hadn't glimpsed before. It was easy, too easy to forget who he was, what he was. As we shared a dessert, a delicate lemon tart with fresh berries, I found myself laughing at a story he told about his first visit to Italy as a teenager. His smile in response was warm, genuine, reaching all the way to his eyes. You should laugh more often, he said, reaching across the table to brush his fingers against mine. It transforms you. Our fingers intertwined on the tablecloth, and I didn't pull away. The wine, the setting, the man across from me, it all combined to create a dreamlike quality, as if we were characters in a story rather than real people with complicated lives. What happens next? I asked, my voice soft in the candlelight. If I stay, if I choose you. His eyes darkened. You become mine, in every way. As what? Your mistress? Your prisoner? As my wife. The word hung between us like a physical presence. Wife, not girlfriend, not mistress, wife. The most permanent, binding claim a man could make on a woman. You can't be serious, I whispered, my fingers suddenly stiff within his. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Alexander's expression was solemn, his dark eyes unwavering. When I said forever, Emma, I meant it. I don't do temporary, not with you. We barely know each other. My voice sounded thin, distant to my own ears. You can't possibly want to marry someone you just met. I've known you for 6 months, he countered. I've watched you, learned about you, seen who you truly are. The only difference is that now you're aware of me too. That's not how relationships work. Normal people date. They learn about each other. They fall in love. We are not normal people. His grip on my hand tightened, not painfully, but with unmistakable possession. I am the head of a family empire. You are the woman I have chosen. Traditional courtship isn't an option for us. Because you kidnapped me, I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Because my world doesn't allow for the luxury of time. Every day I'm not with you is a day you could be taken from me, by a rival family, by law enforcement, by any of a dozen forces that would destroy what I'm building. And what exactly are you building? I asked, trying to understand this man who spoke of marriage to a woman he'd technically just met. His gaze grew distant for a moment. A legacy. Something that will outlast me, something worthy. His eyes refocused on mine. My father built his empire on blood and fear. I'm transforming it, diversifying into legitimate businesses, establishing political connections, creating stability. I need a partner in that, someone who sees the world as it should be, not just as it is. And that's me? A waitress from Boston with no connections, no wealth, nothing to offer your empire? You have everything to offer. The sincerity in his voice was disarming. Compassion, moral clarity, strength that comes from goodness, not fear. He brought my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against my knuckles. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an angle, a hidden agenda, except you. I pulled my hand away, needing distance to think clearly. This is insane. You can't just decide someone will be your wife without their input. I'm not deciding for you. I'm asking. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his features. Stay with me for these 2 weeks. Let me show you what life with me would be. Then make your choice. And if I choose to leave, then you leave, with enough money to secure your mother's care for the rest of her life and to start fresh wherever you wish. His expression hardened slightly. But understand this, Emma. If you leave completely. I won't pursue you. I won't watch over you. It will be a clean break, because your pride couldn't handle rejection. Because I can't afford half measures. In my position, attachments are vulnerabilities. If you're not fully mine, protected by my name and my power, then you're a weakness I can't allow. His brutal honesty was both chilling and strangely reassuring. At least he wasn't trying to manipulate me with false promises or romantic fantasies. 2 weeks, I repeated, buying time to process everything. No commitments until then. Relief softened his features. No commitments until then. The rest of dinner passed in a strange, charged atmosphere. Alexander told me more about his businesses, both legitimate and otherwise, answering my questions with surprising candor. He controlled shipping routes throughout Eastern Europe, owned real estate across 3 continents, had interests in technology startups and banking institutions. The scope of his power was dizzying. By the time we left the restaurant, night had fallen completely. The coast transformed into a glittering ribbon of lights against the darkness of the Mediterranean. Alexander drove more slowly on the return journey, one hand resting casually on my knee, his touch warm through the thin fabric of my dress. "Tomorrow," he said as we wound along the coastal road. "I have meetings in the morning, but the afternoon is ours. I'd like to take you sailing. I've never been sailing before." He smiled, the expression softening his severe features. "There are many firsts I look forward to sharing with you, Emma." The intimate promise in his voice sent heat spiraling through me. I turned to look out at the sea, trying to calm my racing pulse. This man, this dangerous, compelling man, affected me in ways I couldn't understand. Despite everything I knew about him, despite the circumstances that had brought me here, I was drawn to him like a moth to flame. When we returned to the villa, Alexander walked me to my room, maintaining a respectful distance despite the tension crackling between us. At my door he stopped, his eyes holding mine in the soft hallway light. "Good night, Emma," he said, his voice a low rumble that I felt more than heard. "Good night, Alexander." He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his lips brushed against my cheek, lingering just a fraction too long to be entirely proper. The simple touch sent electricity racing through me, leaving me breathless. Then he was gone, striding down the hallway without looking back, leaving me alone with my confused thoughts and the ghost of his touch on my skin. Morning brought clarity, or at least the pretense of it. In the harsh light of day, the dinner conversation seemed like a fever dream. Marriage proposals from Mafia bosses weren't part of any reality I recognized. Yet the memory of Alexander's intensity, his unwavering certainty, lingered like a physical presence. I spent the morning exploring the gardens, trying to make sense of my situation. Somewhere between the rose trellises and lemon trees, I admitted a truth to myself. I was attracted to Alexander Volkov. Not just to his wealth or power, but to him, the man who looked at me as if I were the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. I didn't have to understand it to acknowledge it, and acknowledging it gave me back some measure of control. This wasn't just happening to me. I was a participant in it, with choices to make. By the time Alexander found me, I'd reached something resembling peace with my conflicted feelings. "You look beautiful today," he said, approaching along a stone path. He'd traded his usual suit for casual linen pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. The more relaxed attire made him appear younger, less forbidding. "Thank you." I'd chosen a simple white sundress from the wardrobe that had mysteriously expanded overnight, with more clothes in my exact size. "Are we still going sailing? If you'd like to." For once, he seemed almost hesitant, as if uncertain of my mood after last night's revelations. I would. The decision felt significant somehow, a step toward something I couldn't yet name. His smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds, warm, transformative. The boat is ready whenever we are. The boat, it turned out, was a sleek yacht moored at a private dock below the villa. Crew members greeted us respectfully as we boarded, but once we were underway, they maintained a discreet distance, giving us the illusion of privacy. Alexander was different on the water. More relaxed, the weight of his responsibilities temporarily lifted. He showed me how to steer, his hands guiding mine on the wheel, his body a solid warmth behind me. He pointed out landmarks along the coast, telling stories of ancient pirates and modern celebrities, his knowledge seemingly endless. We anchored in a secluded cove, where the water was an impossible shade of turquoise. Alexander had packed a lunch, or rather, had it packed for us. A feast of local specialties and chilled wine that we ate on the upper deck, the Mediterranean stretching endlessly around us. "You love it here," I observed, watching as he gazed out at the sea, contentment softening his usually vigilant expression. "It's one of the few places where I feel free," he admitted. Away from the demands of business, the politics, the constant vigilance. "Is it always like that? Having to watch your back?" "Always." There was no self-pity in his tone, just statement of fact. "It's the life I was born into, the price of the power I hold." Sounds lonely. The observation slipped out before I could filter it. His eyes met mine, something vulnerable flickering in their depths. "It is. That's why finding you." He trailed off, then reached across the small table between us, his fingers brushing mine. "You see the real me, Emma, not just the power or the money or the danger. You see me." The simple truth of it resonated within me. Despite everything, the kidnapping, the criminal empire, the impossible marriage proposal, I did see him. The man beneath the Mafia boss. The human being behind the carefully controlled exterior. "I'm trying to," I said honestly. His smile was brief but genuine. "That's more than anyone else has ever done." After lunch, he suggested swimming. I hesitated, not having packed a swimsuit, but he produced one. Of course he had, in my exact size. A modest navy blue one-piece that somehow still managed to be elegant. The water was perfect, cool enough to be refreshing under the warm Mediterranean sun, clear enough to see fish darting between rocks far below. Alexander swam with the powerful grace of an athlete, cutting through the water with practiced ease. I was less graceful, but enthusiastic, reveling in the novelty of swimming in the open sea rather than the chlorinated public pools of my childhood. When I tired, Alexander helped me back onto the boat, his hands strong and sure around my waist. Water droplets clung to his skin, highlighting the defined muscles of his chest and arms. I caught myself staring and quickly looked away, but not before noticing the heat in his eyes as he watched my reaction. We dried off in the sun, wrapped in plush towels, sipping cold drinks brought by the discreetly attentive crew. The day had a dreamlike quality, the perfect weather, the impossibly blue sea, the handsome, dangerous man watching me with eyes that seemed to see into my soul. "What are you thinking?" he asked, breaking a comfortable silence. I considered lying, then decided on honesty, that this doesn't feel real, any of it. Being here, with you. It's like I've stepped into someone else's life. Or perhaps you've finally stepped into the life you were always meant to have. His voice was soft, but intense. The life you deserve. A life with you. I said it not as a question, but as a statement, testing how the words felt on my tongue. Yes. His eyes never left mine. A life with me, as my partner, my wife, the mother of my children. The last words sent an unexpected pang through me, not fear or rejection, but a strange yearning I hadn't known I possessed. Children? Something vulnerable crossed his face. Family is everything to me, Emma, not just the organization I lead, but true family. Blood, loyalty, continuation. I want children. A son to carry on my name, daughters to bring light into our home. Our home, I echoed, the concept simultaneously foreign and compelling. Yes. He moved closer, reaching out to trace the line of my jaw with gentle fingers. I would build you a palace if you wanted it, or a simple cottage by the sea. Anything you desire. I don't want palaces or cottages. I met his gaze steadily, If, and it's still a very big if, I were to consider this crazy proposal, I'd want honesty. Complete honesty. About your business, your past, everything. His expression grew serious. There are things in my past, in my business, that would disturb you. Things I'm not proud of. Things I've done out of necessity rather than choice. I need to know who I'd be binding myself to. The real you. Not just the charming man on a yacht. He was quiet for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. You deserve the truth. All of it. If you're to be my wife, there can be no secrets between us. He took my hand, his grip firm but gentle. Tonight, after dinner, I'll tell you everything. And then you can decide if you still want to consider my proposal. The sun was beginning to set as we returned to shore, painting the sky in spectacular shades of orange and pink. Alexander stood behind me at the railing, his arms wrapped around my waist, his chin resting lightly on my head. We fit together perfectly, as if my body had been designed to complement his. Beautiful, I murmured, watching the sunset transform the coast into a golden wonderland. Yes, he agreed. But when I glanced up, he wasn't looking at the sunset. He was looking at me.